Just kind of discuss being an RV dealership in a campground setting. If that's not what you're here for, then now's the time to switch. So we're going to talk about what we do, a little bit about what it's like to be an RV dealer on a small scale in a campground, and talk a little bit about the impact it's made on our business, and then we'll kind of cracker barrel it or have discussions if anybody has any questions about that, or about anything else for that matter. We can. Did you mean to leave that open, Emily?
Yeah, I can close it all the way if you want.
Okay, that's fine. Just checking.
I just thought someone might still be.
Might be some trickling in, you never know. But yeah, and then we can even get off topic if you want. We can talk about something else if we have extra time. So, because this first part probably won't take too long. So my name is Adam. This is my sister Emily. We are 2 of 3 siblings, co-owners, 3rd generation of Lake Arrowhead Campground in Montello, Wisconsin. In case you don't know us. We've been doing this for a long time. We kind of grew up in the campground business. We've got, depending on how you count them, roughly 3 campgrounds or so on. It's hard to say.
I usually say 2.
2, because we kind of combined 2 of them, plus a mobile home park, plus a small RV dealership. So that's kind of our operation. We've got about 400 and some odd sites total when you put all those together. And they're all kind of geographically located near one another, which is actually really nice. They're only about 1.5 miles of total distance for all the parks that we own. They're kind of all on the north shore of Lake Puckaway, down by Montello. So back in around 1990 or so, the 2nd generation owners, so my dad and his wife, they started the RV dealership, mostly because of the new park model scene that was kind of coming up at that time when the ANSI 119.5 park model stuff was getting ironed out at the national level. And Dad saw an opportunity to sort of increase our bottom line a little bit by starting an RV dealership. And since then, what we've done is we've pretty much stuck with park models or destination trailers as time has gone on, which in the early days, in the 90s, they called those park models. You know, destination trailers in the 90s were sort of a little bit beefier. We'll talk about the 2 different types of trailers here in a second, but and they were called 8.5 wide park models at that time, and then the industry has sort of changed its nomenclature over the years. So just to be clear, so everybody understands, who understands kind of what a park model is? Raise your hand. Yeah, okay, good. You know, typically, I mean, the RV industry, no offense to the RV industry people here, is kind of really confusing about they're not very consistent, I guess, about their nomenclature, which bothers me a little. But, you know, park model usually has a shingled roof. It's usually peaked in the middle, right? It's usually around 11 to 12 feet wide, 400 square feet. And of course, it's built to that national code, ANSI 119.5. Destination trailers is a super fuzzy category. And we even have trouble on our end sort of enforcing our rules about destination trailers, which we'll talk about in a minute. But destination trailers are like really big travel trailers, right? So is everybody kind of familiar with destination trailers? They usually, so I don't see a lot of nodding, so not really. So they're usually like train car looking. People talk about them as like boxcar, train car looking. They're usually kind of square-ish. They're built like a travel trailer, typically. They've got the regular aluminum siding, rubber roof that's crowned a little bit, but they're usually maybe a little bit wider with a lot more slide outs, a taller ceiling, usually 39 to 43 feet long. They're just sort of like an oversized travel trailer.
So example would be like there's a Cherokee one, there's the like Villa, the Salem Villa, the
Grand Lodge from Wildwood. Yep.
That's what we're talking about, is those styles.
Keystone, I think, now has one with a loft, even a little loft in the back but it's like a travel trailer. So those are your destination trailers, and sometimes they're also called park trailers, just to make it even more confusing with park models. So our customers have a real hard time with that. We stick with the destination trailer name, so that doesn't sound like park model. So in our business, the way that we do it, we're a really small dealership. Like I said, we sell pretty much only in-house. On our sites. We don't really sell outside the park unless we have like a trade-in or an older used unit that needs to leave our park because it's getting too old. Outside of that, in general, we only sell trailers set up on site. We sell new park models from 2 different manufacturers, Forest River, which has a couple different lines that we carry, and Crop, which has 3 different lines that we carry. So we sell from 2 different manufacturers for park models, and we also sell Cherokee destination trailers. And the way that for new units. And then we also resell used units on site, which is a really important part of our business that we'll talk about separately. So first of all, from the new standpoint, what we do to help our bottom line out is we actually require anybody who wants a park model or a destination trailer in any of our parks, except for the mobile home park, which is, manufactured homes. That's housing, that's different. But in the campgrounds, anybody who wants a park model or a destination trailer has to buy it through us. So we do not allow folks to bring those in. And then that, of course, sort of creates the demand. It's not a problem with park models. We have almost nobody complain about that. Every once in a while, though, because destination trailers are sort of a fuzzy line, that can be a problem. Because somebody who has a destination trailer at another park doesn't necessarily think of it as different than a travel trailer. So that every once in a while can be.
So they have to buy those from you?
If they want to bring it in. So if somebody's at a different park and they have a destination trailer and they say, hey, we want to come to your park, they have to apply anyway to be a seasonal at our park. This is for seasonals only, of course, not for overnighters. Not too many people are pulling destination trailers on a weekend basis, but if they were, they could do it. They just couldn't be a seasonal. So yeah, so they would apply, they would give us the model, the make, model, year of the trailer, photos of the trailer, we would look at it. Sometimes it's hard to even tell if it's considered a destination trailer or not. We have to go to the manufacturer's documentation, see if they call it a destination trailer. And then yeah, if it is one, we won't let it in. They have to buy. We will take it on trade, yep, and then resell it, you bet. We don't do a lot of trade-ins because, we're a small dealership, and trade-ins are tough. But we do them, for sure, on new units and units that we own. So on the new end of the business, it's been, on both ends, it's been great. The new end is probably the more complicated component, selling new park models and new destination trailers because we had to become dealers with manufacturers. We had to, learn about their product line. You got to be able to sort of, go through the whole process of, writing up the new orders and, have the boxes for options. It's not impossible, but there's a little bit of, learning curve to get going on that. But it's been very lucrative for us. One of the things that we do is our most desirable sites, and we're lucky because we have waterfront, a number of waterfront sites, but our most desirable sites, we won't allow seasonals to bring in a trailer on those. We will require folks to buy a trailer from us on that site, which, as you can imagine, significantly increases the profit margin, at least initially, on that site, especially if you're building new sites. It works out great because you can help cash flow the construction or the debt service or whatever, however you're doing it, by selling units on those sites. Sometimes we'll pre-order inventory and have them set up, like ready to go on the sites, but lately especially, we've been more just custom ordering for folks when they, when they say, hey, I really want this site, then we sit down and we custom order the park model or destination trailer that they're looking for, and it takes, weeks to months to get it here, potentially, because of course we're the dealer, so we have to order it from the manufacturer, they have to build it. But it has, excuse me, it has worked out pretty well in that regard, and I would say it's worth the hassle, even just the new side of it, for sure. You're not making huge money, but it does two things. It increases your overall revenue significantly, right? Because these are big ticket items. People are writing checks for anywhere from, at the low end, $38,000, $40,000 on a new unit, up to
the markup is usually
up to $70,000 to $80,000, right? So you've got that, and then if you're talking about markup, in terms of gross profit, the gross profit's usually pretty good also. The markup in a percentage, we got to be careful talking about actual dollar numbers that we do. So I'm going to try to stick to percentages as much as I can. The percentage markup is probably around, on the new units, 10 to 20. Probably 10 to 15, and that's part. And on a big ticket item, that's a solid markup. That's part of why we only do destination trailers and park models, is because in the industry, and these ladies know more than we do, for things like travel trailers and such, if we were to try to sell travel trailers on site, those margins tend to be pretty thin, and so you kind of got to be a big dealer who sells 200, 300 units, 2,000 units a year to really make any money off of that and have them sitting in stock. And so for us, we've just stayed out of that. Whereas the destination and the park models are a little more niche, and they're a little bit higher margin, higher markup.
And you can do a higher markup too when you have it all set up, ready to go, turnkey.
That's what people by us are looking for. They want something that the deck's there, it's skirted, it's plumbed, they want it.
And we'll do the whole package, yep. Even if it's not ready, we'll.
I've only done it once.
Yep. And we've had pretty good luck. I mean, you lose some folks for sure by not having it ready when they show up. But for the most part, I don't think we've lost too many people where they, when they find a site they want and the campground that they want, we found that they're willing to wait for us to do the building. We'll say, okay, it's gonna be 6-8 weeks or whatever it is to get the trailer in, build the deck, whatever.
I think people like customizing it, I want these cabinets, I want this layout, I want, these options. I think a lot of times that is as much of a selling point.
So the other side of the business, which I would strongly encourage, and we talk about this a lot, every single campground to get into. It's not hard to get an RV's dealer's license. I only looked up what we pay on that, and it's like $280 for one or something a year.
No, it's 2 years.
Or for 2 years?
It's for 2 years, and it's...
Amy would know.
We pay around 300 some, but we have several people licensed.
As salespeople.
I gave you the exact number.
Yeah, I have it here, but it's in the...
Like, right, 250.
Yeah, 250-ish.
Bare minimum for 2 years is all it costs. I mean, it's a little bit of paperwork, but it's not a big hassle. It's not really
just to
difficult
become a
do.
dealer.
To become a dealer.
And then what I would encourage everybody to do is become a dealer and then resell your seasonals units for them whenever they want to sell on site.
How many trailers do you have to sell before you need a dealer's license? 1, 10 a year?
It's 2. I thought it was 2, yeah.
2 a year?
If
See,
you
because
sell-
I'm up against that all the time, that people want to sell their camper, they want to sell it on the site. We don't let them sell the site, we let them sell the camper. The new people either have to jump all our hoops, do the background check.
Right.
And fit, or else they can take it off the site. But if they sell it, they take it off the site, move it to another site, then I'm stuck with a site that's half brown and it needs to be leveled and
Right.
cleaned up and
Right.
grass, and then I get all that done for $500 to $1,000. And then somebody comes and plots a camper in a deck in the same exact place and
Right.
ruins everything it did.
Right.
You gotta make it look.
But it's hard to rent it until it looks nice. Yep, I understand. So how many people here at least charge like a fee if someone's selling their trailer on site? So they collect a fee. Okay, you two do, but the rest of you folks don't. Okay, so most campgrounds I think probably do that. Like if someone's a seasonal selling a trailer on their site, the campground gets $50 to $2,000. Maybe is up on the upper end depending on your campground. 10% of the sale, but you have to obviously trust them to tell you what 10% is. But probably they're mostly honest, hopefully. So what we do is at least you're getting something, and there's no work. So the nice thing about that is that you're getting 10% and you have very little work on the sale process. So there is an advantage to that.
Some campgrounds do a fair amount of work for little or nothing.
That's true. Some of them will show the trailer for their seasonals and keep the keys and advertise it and all that kind of stuff, and then they're not even selling it for them. We're getting much money. But in our case, what has worked out really well is if you want to sell your trailer at any time, sort of similar to your situation, they can because they own the trailer. But whoever buys it has to pack it up and get it out of there. You got 48 hours or whatever the contract says to get it out of here once it changes
What if
hands.
they want to stay in your apartment, or they still have to move to a different site?
If they don't sell through me, if the existing seasonal is selling it, yeah. I mean, they got to pack it up, take it out, cross the street, outside the park, and then turn in their application. And then maybe we'll let them back in, and maybe we won't. So nobody does that,
And
right?
often we have a waiting list. So if they did that,
It could take years.
they'd be on the waiting list.
Right,
Who
to
knows
get
what
back
they
in.
say.
So pretty much nobody does that unless it's like an old unit and I force them to sell it outside the park to get it gone. What they do is they sign up with us to do the sale on site. Now the way that we structure that is, it does a couple things. It allows us the ability to sort of decide, is it time for this unit to go or not to go? And we make that real clear up front when our seasonals join us, when they buy trailers. We don't, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, but we don't approve every trailer to resell on site. And a lot of times, when we have somebody buying an older used unit with a deck and a porch and all set up, we will tell them at the time of their purchase of it that, hey, this is the last time this is going to sell. So, we'll put it right in the contract, just so you know, this sucker, sometimes we'll say it's not guaranteed. Sometimes we'll say this thing is going after this sale. We're going to let you buy it. And then usually that's a negotiating point for them. Yep, exactly. So that gives us the ability to decide when trailers go. It gives us the ability to really kind of check on the new people because we're doing the sale. So the showings, the advertising, all that kind of stuff we do. So the new people come in, they start looking at trailers, we can kind of interview them, see if they're going to be a problem, have them fill out the application, all that kind of stuff. So it gives us a little bit more control. And then the other thing that is huge about it is that it gives us a significant revenue source. I mean, there's a bit of work. We put it on our website. You gotta have staff or yourself go around and show the trailers. You gotta track all the keys, all that kind of stuff. But we probably, so seasonal sites, we have what, 200, maybe?
240, about 240.
Is that what it is, about 240? Okay. So 240 seasonals. And we probably sell, on an average year, I would say 15 to 20 used units.
About 15.
So, yeah, okay. So maybe 7% on any given year of our seasonal sites are being sort of rolled over as sales. Others are leaving and new ones are coming in and stuff. And we get a minimum of about 50 to 60% of a year's seasonal fee on a sale. On the cheapest sale or the lowest end site. And then we structure it based on the type of our like sort of the value of the site, because the site adds value to the sale, right? And that's how we explain this to our customers, is if you want to sell your camping unit set up on a site, that's fine. The camping unit's easy, right? It's got a Blue Book value. You can look it up and see how much it's worth, and especially older camping units are worth nothing. But the value, if it's worth $5,000 Blue Book, but it's going to sell for $15,000 on this site, well, the value there, some of that is going to be if you have a porch or a deck, which is something that they own. But a lot of that is because it's on our campground. People want to get into our campground. So you're selling my land. I'm not a realtor for you, right? Because I own the land. You own the home, if we're thinking about the realtor analogy. In a realtor's analogy, they're just effecting a transaction. They're just marketing and doing a transaction. They own nothing. In this case, I own the land. You own the home, if you will, if you're the customer. Well, right, but from a realtor standpoint, if we're doing the analysis or the analogy, you own the home, I own the land, and so that's why we get a bigger commission based upon how much that land adds to the value. And in some cases, it's 120% of a year's fee on that seasonal site. If it's a really desirable site, we'll get about 120, 130% of that year's seasonal fee as a commission out of that sale. Yes?
Do you use a listing contract then?
We do not. Nope. So we do everything in-house, if I'm understanding your question properly.
I was wondering if you have a listing contract with the seller.
Oh, yeah, with the owner of the unit? Yes, we do.
Okay.
So we do a consignment sales agreement. Yep. We're a consignment, like a dealer consignment sale. And there's usually, so we have a special one that's kind of got language in there that deals with the site as well as dealing with the sale of the unit, because they're sort of two separate things. So yes, that we do. We don't contract with an outside agency. I thought that's what you're asking. Yep. So yeah, and so that component has been huge. So if we kind of wrap this all back together as our overview here, and then we can talk about the details. We in the last, I kind of looked up the numbers for the last 5 years, and for all of our seasonal sites and all of our seasonal revenue, new and used resales, when you put them all together, it's added about a 20% premium per year, so 20% in increased gross profit actually over each seasonal site. So in other words, not total revenue, because gross revenue in trailer sales is huge. But if you take your total revenue and you subtract out your cost of goods, like the cost of the trailers, you get your gross profit. And so that in a campground environment, they're usually, when we talk about revenue and gross profit, not to get too much into the weeds, they're kind of similar in a campground environment, setting aside the trailers for now, just campsites, right? Because there's no cost of goods. So if your campsite makes you $3,000 a year, and you want to subtract your cost of goods, well, what's your cost of goods in a campground environment? There really isn't. There's just expenses. So $3,000 is your gross revenue. It's kind of also your gross profit. And so then after you take your gross profit, you subtract out your expenses, that's where you get your net income, right? So when we kind of compare trailer sales to the campground industry, we take that gross profit number. If you sell $100,000 in park models in a year, but you had to pay, whatever, $80,000 in cost of goods to buy those park models, well, that gross profit number, the $20,000, that's really the number that's comparable to your seasonal site revenue of $3,000 a year or whatever.
You think that's an extra 20% on the campground revenue?
Right, exactly. So,
Gross to gross.
yep. Exactly. So in this scenario, as an example, if we, I mean, these are just made up numbers, but if we sold $100,000 worth of trailers last year, And then we had $80,000 worth of buying those trailers, so cost of goods. We'd have $20,000 in gross profit. That would be 20% of our seasonal revenue. So in this example, then that would mean that $100,000 was our seasonal revenue, and we tacked on $20,000 of gross profit from our trailer sales. Those aren't real numbers, but that gives you an idea of sort of 20% extra on every seasonal site a year. And obviously there's some extra expenses involved in that. The license fee is minimal, but you've got staffing and all that kind of stuff. Our marketing though is pretty inexpensive. It's mostly our own website and putting up posters and stuff, like little trailers for sale sheets at various places. Most of the cost is probably the time of the staff, either doing showings, dragging customers around and taking them through all the trailers they want to look at, or creating the marketing pages.
Or like warranty claims for
Yeah,
new units.
there is some of that.
and
Repairs, yep.
repairs, yeah.
With the used units that you're reselling for a seasonal, there's no warranty. We're not responsible for that. I mean, every once in a while we'll help somebody out because it's an unfortunate situation, but in general, that's minimal. You have to be careful just to make sure if you're gonna resell one of your seasonals units that you don't do it for one that's garbage, or that the new people are going to move in and they're going to be like, oh, look at all this mold in here. Like, you don't want to be in that situation. So you just got to be a little selective about who you resell, but then as long as you do that, that's really simple. But the new units, there's a higher markup, there's higher profit, but yes, there's more hassle with, things like warranty claims and such.
So when you value a trailer that's in your park that you're gonna basically buy from the old owner and try to resell it, how do you value what that's worth? Because it's on your site, like you said, it's worth way more, and they know that.
Right.
You just go in and find a number on the trailer and figure the deck's worth $1,000, and the shed's worth a couple hundred. And that's how do you come up with that number of what you're gonna give them?
Good question. So there's two questions there we want to address. The first one is I want to make sure it's clear, we don't buy the unit from the seasonal and then resell it. We let them sign a consignment contract with us, so they continue to own it until we sell it on behalf of them. And the advantage to that is they keep paying seasonal fees the entire time while it's for sale. So there's no risk to us basically as far as losing revenue. They keep paying and then when the new person takes over, we actually prorate the seasonal fee from the day of closing. The people who are selling, they get the rest of the season back. The new people pick up and pay for that season. So it's very fair. Everybody is comfortable. But to your question of how do we value it, that's a little bit tricky. I mean, it takes a little bit of sort of practice. And what it really comes down to is experience. In the beginning, we just sort of threw out numbers and said, oh, I think that the shed adds this much, and I think that the deck adds this much, and I think people will pay this much extra for this site. And over time, we found out how much extra it was worth, how much people were willing to pay for that waterfront view, in terms of buying the trailer up front. And then what we do is for our sellers, for the seasonals who want to leave, we actually kind of create a little spreadsheet that breaks that all down. Like, here's the Blue Book value trailer, here's what the shed adds, here's what the deck adds, and then at the bottom, here's what we've gone back and forth on this, but sometimes we'll have a line item that says, here's what the site adds, this much dollar. The view or whatever, exactly. Or the ability for them to get into our park instead of waiting for 2 years for the seasonal waiting list. Sometimes we've done that. Sometimes we've left that line out and just said at the bottom, here's the total value of what you own. Here's what we think we can get out of it. So then that number of how much the site adds is just sort of built into the difference there. And we've actually found that works out better. If we just leave it off of there and just say, hey, we're going to get you this much even though it's only worth $3,000 less or whatever the number is. So that's how we handle that problem. And it's just been kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. And with selling on consignment, you also have the bonus of if somebody wants to argue with you and they're like, I will not sell it for less than 20 grand. And you're like, this thing is worth 7 grand. You can list it and nobody's going to pay 20 grand. It's just going to sit there, and they have that opportunity to learn. I mean, we try and have the conversation to get them to realistic expectations and set a reasonable price because we don't want to waste our time.
Get you in a second
either.
here.
But every once in a while, if you feel like you want to still try and sell it for them and you can't set a reasonable price, then we can watch it sit.
And the consignment agreement does have language in there about like if we waste a bunch of our time and then it doesn't work and then they pull out because they wanted 20 grand, it's worth 7, where we can recoup some of our costs. We've probably done that 3 times ever, and we usually just sort of cut our losses. But we won't list one for a year, that is totally ridiculous. We might start out with it for a month or two and then be like, hey, nobody's even looking at this, talk to the customers, just give them that feedback. Amy?
The NADA guidebook, don't they kind of give values for used?
They do, for the trailer.
Blue
Do
book
you
that you just-
find them accurate?
Well, it's definitely low for on-site sales.
Okay.
So that, which works out, like I said, good for us because
Yeah.
we can get a lot more for the same unit set up on our site. I don't have a good feel how accurate that would be if it was in a dealer's lot somewhere,
Yeah, sitting on a lot.
sitting on a lot, because I don't have a dealer's lot and I don't know how much they go for. The only experience that we have on that is like the really low-end old beater units that we're just sort of selling in a lot, if you will, just for people to take hunting or whatever down the road to crappier campgrounds. I don't know, but those, it seems pretty ballpark. The low-end NADA values, it seems like we get about Blue Book value out of them usually, and certainly banks rely heavily on the NADA Blue Book, which can be a problem for buyers if they're buying an old used unit. I'm sure you guys have a lot of this, where you have an older camper that would be worth nothing if it was sitting on a dealer's lot, but it's got this beautiful porch built on and all this great landscaping on this gorgeous site that's enormous, and so it's got some value in your park. They might get $20,000 out of a $2,000 camper unit because of all the other stuff that's with it, if you guys allow other structures and such. And so in that case, it can be really hard to find a buyer. Because they have to have cash in hand. The bank will loan them 80% of $2,000 because that's what the trailer's officially worth, and the bank doesn't care about all the other stuff. So that is a conversation we also have to have with our seasonal sellers when the time comes and they want to sell. If we approve the sale, we'll have to sit down and say, hey, just so you know, it could be hard to find a buyer because they're going to have cash in hand. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
So on your
We'll get to you next.
assignment contract, you're working that on a percentage?
Good question. We used to do it on a percentage. We usually don't anymore. We do occasionally if it's a really high value one where the percentage is going to come out okay. But there's a couple different ways that you can do it based on the sort of standard language that we have in there. And this is an old contract we got, I think, from the state originally. I don't know. We'd have to ask the lawyers what options are actually legal anymore.
Yeah, I think
Like if there's more options than what we have, DOT, yeah, it was something that was provided to us. But there was an option for sort of like a percentage or a minimum and 50-50 above it. And so what we do is sort of the minimum 50-50 scenario where we take like no matter what we sell it for, it's X amount of dollars minimum, just make up a number. It's $1,000 minimum. Actually, ours are all higher than that, but let's just say it was $1,000 minimum no matter what we sell it for. And then we usually set a minimum sale price. So let's say it's a $10,000 trailer. We don't sell them that low either, usually on site, but just as an example for numbers. So, if it's, we're not going to sell your unit for less than $10,000, out of which we will take a $1,000 commission. So they would get 9, we would get 1. And that $10,000 number is based upon the value of the trailer, and all the structures and such. And then if we sell it for more than $10,000, we split that excess 50-50. So if we sell it for $11,000, we get an extra $500 and they get an extra $500. And so that's the way our contract's usually written. And then what we do, because people want to haggle with you and they want to, well, why do you get this extra money when you sell it for more? Well, that's the incentive for us to sell it as high as possible. But people don't like that. So what we've actually done is we've set those minimums. If it's $1,000 or whatever, we set that number high enough that it's where we want to land. So we don't have to sell it more than the minimum price to get what we think is our fair commission out of it. And then all the time we just waive that 50-50. And then people are really excited about it. Because people also, they'll argue with you about that minimum price. We'll say, hey, your trailer and all your stuff's worth $10,000. Well, no, it's worth 20. Well, then we'll say, okay, well, it's not, but fine, we'll sign the contract for $20,000. So we know we're never gonna get the 50-50 out of it because we're gonna sell it for 12 if we're lucky. We're never gonna get any more than 20. And so that way, as long as our minimum commission is, a dollar amount that is appropriate, we'll just sell it for whatever amount they want. You got to be a little careful because you don't want to take advantage of your new customer either. Right. So, if you get somebody who comes in and who's like, oh, I'm really excited, this is perfect, sometimes we'll kind of hint to them, hey, this is a little inflated. You might want to give a lower offer, because we don't want them getting screwed.
You have to deal with them later on.
Right, because they're going to be my customers. They're going to be there. So, that adds extra
Right. And that is a
safety.
difficult balance because they're both your customer.
Right.
The customer who's leaving and the customer who's coming, and you want to make sure that you walk that line of being fair with everyone. So we try and be very transparent. And we say that when people come to look at units and stuff, we're like, we're not being shady. This is a long-term relationship we're about to enter in. You will know if we're shady, you know, in 5 minutes.
Right.
The way seasonals all talk to each other. So, you know, we're going to tell it to you straight.
Wendy?
So you do not allow somebody to sell their unit, you have to do it
If it stays on the site.
if it stays on site.
Right. They can sell anytime they want, but it's just got to leave.
Right. So if they want to leave and they want to sell the unit, they have to sell through you.
Yes.
If they want it to stay on the site. Yep, exactly.
And it gives us total control. And I will say, since we also have a manufactured housing community, we kind of see what the other side is like, because there you can't control that. You know, people sell their house to somebody else and they have to jump through our hoops. But it's not like this where we can totally control who comes in and the marketing and everything. And let me tell you, it's much nicer. Do it this way. Besides the extreme color.
Anecdotally, why do people leave? Like, is there a common thread? Is it usually because someone dies, or is it?
So I would say our top 2 reasons why people leave our campground are divorce, and they want to buy a full-time house in the area. Those are the number 1s and 2s of why people stop being seasonal. But I mean, people's financial circumstances change. The kids are in high school and college and never want to come up anymore. I mean, sometimes they find a different place, but more often it's those first 2 or life changes.
And we're pretty expensive, you know, sort of like Paul's Park. You know, we're sort of on the upper end of cost, and so in a lot of seasonal parks, I think, you know, you can just sort of keep it if you're not using it a whole lot and you're not really sure if you want to keep it from one year to the next. But like in our park, it's expensive trailer storage, and so, you know, if people aren't using it a lot, there's a stronger incentive, I think, for them to sort of jump ship. So we do have a lot of turnover for that reason. We have a lot of demand, but also, you know, every year there's a lot of turnover.
But we have some seasonals for a long time. I mean,
We
we've
do.
had seasonals for 30 plus years.
We're probably at about 10% a year, I would say, because you have about 7% that are sales. So there's probably about 10% a year turnover, which I think is high for most seasonals campgrounds, I would guess. Talking to other campgrounds, I feel like a lot of people, they're seasonal parks that people just stay for long periods of time, which is nice. That's less work. You know, everything's a trade-off, right? I mean, our rates are high, but it does cause a lot more turnover, and that's more work. Every time you got to get that new seasonal, even if they're not a sale, you know, and prep the site and make it look nice so they can destroy it 5 minutes later, whatever. You know, I mean, that's just a lot of extra overhead.
But on the plus side, we do feel like it's easier to get rid of an old unit and change of ownership than to just be like, oh, well, time's up, get it up tomorrow. You know, that's a more difficult conversation to have. I mean, we do, if somebody's there a long time and the unit is in bad condition and it needs to go, we'll, you know, maybe eventually give them a hard deadline. But mostly we try and do it at change of hands, and that's a lot easier.
And that has helped us keep the park going in the right direction. Yes?
In order to do that in our park, we have 235 seasonals.
Mm-hmm.
We put in the seasonal contract, if the trailer's over 15 years old, they can't stay on it. If they sell it, they can't stay.
Sure.
So that automatically either gets a new trailer out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you enforce that 100%?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. How does that go for you as far as, you know, is there a lot of pushback?
We have, I think the smartest thing I did in 40 years is went this anniversary billing.
Okay.
And what we do is when a new seasonal comes on, we have all the prices for we have 9 different prices for our seasonal lots, depending on where they are in
Okay.
the park and what.
That's similar. Yep.
And when we put it into effect, we didn't raise the people that were on the site as much as we did when we raised the new price.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we had this gap.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody knows that when they leave, we're gonna get that much more for the site.
Right.
Because it's published number. And we bill them, if they came in July, we bill them in July, and they have to pay half immediately and the other half over 6 months.
So you got seasonal contracts renewing all the time throughout the year. Boy, Emily would kill me if I did that. Yeah, 40-some seasonal rates? Oof. That's a lot of tracking. You gotta have good software.
You also have that risk of being killed.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's that. Well, I can see how that works though. We have utilized that whole new people pay more structure a number of times when we have a big rate hike. Like when we find out that Paul's Park is getting a little too high, like higher than us, or we're getting behind, we're like, oh crap, we got to raise our rates. So what we will do is we'll do that same sort of thing where new people will pay, I mean, the published rate will be X amount, and our returning seasonals get a Y discount, like a certain amount of a discount. And then even though it might still be a big jump for the returning folks, it's a less big jump than new people. And they see new people coming in and renting sites and paying more than they're paying, and they're like, okay, well, this is a fair deal. So that has worked out good for us also.
And they feel like what they're paying is worth it, because somebody will pay even more for that same thing.
Right. So as far as the 15-year thing, we do have like a officially 10-year age limit on bringing new trailers into the park. We don't have an age limit on resales. We just do that. I guess we say kind of 10 years or $10,000 in value, I guess is kind of our official, but we fudge that all the time. And we tell people that, that's just sort of like a starting point. But I will say that when you're a dealer and you're reselling units, especially your park models, that park models, for whatever reason, seem to have a really low NADA value, back to your question. And I'm told by the banks that some of that has to do with the glut of park models that were left over from the oil boom crash 2008, 2009 situation, where apparently, thousands of park models, they tell me, were purchased and taken out to like the Dakotas and such as places for people to live. And so then the crash happened, and there's all these park models that everybody's defaulting on loans and so on. So they're hard to get loans for, and they're lower NADA value, even though NADA is supposed to be geographically based. So what we find is that if we're reselling a more than 15-year-old park model, it actually, because park models, hold their structure really well compared to a travel trailer. A 20-year-old park model, if the people have maintained it, looks practically brand new compared to a travel trailer. Where a 20-year-old travel trailer, no matter what you do, it's getting there. And so we find that there is a good business. Like we make more off our commissions on park models than we do on travel trailers, because people are willing to pay that extra amount to have a park model set up, and the Blue Book value is lower. So that's worked out good for us, not forcing people to pull them off when they get old, especially the park models.
We don't enforce that rule on park trailers.
Oh, you don't? Okay. So just travel trailers. Okay. Well, so then that's probably, 15 years, we don't have a lot of travel trailers we allow past 15 years anyway, even on a case-by-case basis.
We've owned the park 44 years, and we've got some seasonals that were there when we came.
Wow. We don't have anybody 44 years. We're in the mid to upper 30s probably is the longest for ours.
Yeah, right around there.
Yep. About when I was born, give or take.
Right, and our
Yep. Right.
park is 40, let's see here, this year is 2019, so 48 this year.
48, yeah. And my dad built it with his dad, opened it up when he was in college. So yeah, we're 48 years, yeah. Okay, any other questions about this? What's your
favorite, I'm sorry, get off topic, but what's your favorite park model dealer to work with? You mentioned Forest River and Crop. I'm the Crop guys, and I don't know Forest River at all.
That's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question.
It's kind of gone back and forth over the years. We like Crop a lot because they're a small family company. So when I call my sales rep at Crop, he's the owner, or one of two owners, I guess. And I deal with him directly, which is nice. And Forest River is a huge company, of course. But Forest River has taken really good care of us recently. We had a unit this last year that was 6 years old, but we found had a defective roof. Obviously well out of warranty, but was clearly built wrong and failed. And they sent their lead sort of manufacturing guy who watches the plant or whatever out to look at it. He confirmed it had failed, and they're going to basically not fully warranty it. I'm going to cover some of the cost, but they're going to basically cover all the materials. I'm going to probably have to cover the labor on it. But so that was pretty impressive, I would say. It would be nice if they covered all of it. And I'm going to cover it for the customer, because there's no way they should have to pay this, and this would be really bad press. I sold it to them, and it's clearly defective. There's no doubt about it. So that's been good. Years ago, Forest River didn't have quite as good a product, and Crop had a far superior product. Now they're probably even. I would say Forest River's really upped their game, and Crop's cut costs a little bit in a few spots where, you know, sometimes that causes a problem. So I guess I would probably say even.
I would say, though, overall warranty claims have been easier with Crop, generally speaking, than with Forest River.
Well, that's a good point. So in the park model division, it's about the same. So park models, it's been wonderful. We don't bill our manufacturers for labor unless it's something really big, but we haven't had anything really big, so we actually have never billed our manufacturers for labor. We just sort of eat the labor on our end, and they get us the parts. And manufacturers love that. Like if you'll do that, they're very flexible.
They'll work with you really well.
Yeah, and so basically any parts that I need, we just call up or send an email and say, hey, we need this, this, that, and this. They don't make us fill out any forms. They don't do anything. They just, okay, we'll send you whatever you need. And that's both of them do that. So I would say it's the same on the park models probably. Although again, if there is a serious issue with Crop, I'm dealing with the owner. So he has the ability to sort of give me the go ahead, which is nice. What I will say is we're also a dealer for Cherokee, for destination trailers, and they are horrible.
Worst.
Horrible for their warranty. I mean, they're a price point trailer. They're super low, and that's Forest River. You know, Cherokee's Forest River. So it's the same company, but none of them know each other. You know, they're a huge corporation, and so we have pretty much given up on warranty claims from the manufacturer with Cherokee. So we just basically eat it all. We order the parts, because to get the parts, you have to go through this next to impossible website to get the parts, and then after you install them, you have to resubmit, you know, to get them to send you a check back for what you spent on their parts to begin with, and they'll make you go through so many steps and, you know, back and forth to verify that it was legitimate. You know, it's just not even worth. I mean, I'll spend, you know, $200 in staff time with somebody trying to coordinate this with Cherokee.
And then they'll discount it and put a service fee on there.
Right. It's horrible. So
There's like a collaboration between the RV manufacturers and the RV dealers to try to fix some of that. I know that's a huge issue for RV dealers is the getting the parts.
Right.
And the whole warranty process is just, it's broken. And there is an effort, and, you know, of course, it'll take 2 years of meetings.
Right.
More meetings and more meetings, but they are trying to work on that. In general, as an industry, that's a problem.
Well, and I'm sure it's kind of a snowball effect, because for us then, when we do try to do a warranty claim with Cherokee, we'll put in all of our labor and all of our everything we can possibly think of that we can charge Cherokee for. We'll put it all in there because we know that 3/4 of the time we're not going to get any of this approved anyway. So you kind of have to, on any warranty claim that actually gets approved, you have to build in as much as you can to help cover some of the other ones.
Or they only pay a quarter, so then you make it 3 times as much so that they'll actually.
Well, and you
cover
can't, I mean, you can't really do that because there's a labor rate thing. But I mean, any way that we can appropriately put in every single penny that we have to spend, we put it in there. And so of course Cherokee sees that and says, oh, all of our dealers are taking advantage of us by putting every single penny in there. Well, that's because you have to, because your system is broke. And we don't do that with the park model dealers because they just take care of us with parts and make it easy. So that's a long explanation.
Is there somebody else other than Cherokee that you would potentially switch to, or are they all?
We would, if if the right circumstances came up, we'd be interested in doing a different. I mean, honestly, at this point, I'd try anybody other than Cherokee, but I'm not super pleased. But the problem with that is the dealer world, as I understand it, and I mean, she can speak more on this, is not like campgrounds. You know, we're all super friendly. Like here I am just telling you everything about my business here. The dealer world, they're not so friendly, it sounds like. They're a bit more competitive all the time. And one of the big things that they compete about is their territories. And so for me to get to be a different dealership for a different travel trailer or destination trailer company is tough because everybody's already got their territories carved out and I'm going to be in somebody else's territory. In the past, we've had mixed success with that because, of course, in our situation, you know, let's say that Paul here, he's a big RV dealership, you know, he's got thousands of units and he sells Wildwood, right? And my campground is in Paul's territory. Well, Paul can't sell in my park anyway because I don't allow outside destination trailers to come into my park. And I don't sell, I'm just a tiny dealership who sells on my own site, so I don't sell outside of my park. So Paul and I aren't really competing. But Paul doesn't usually see it that way. From our experience with dealerships, they say, well, that's our territory, you can't sell. And so it's hard to find anybody who will be able to, that we would be able to pick up in our territory, in our campground. Yeah.
One other thing I was gonna say, though, that would help anyone who is a dealer is, we are working on legislation right now to try to make it, so that the warranty reimbursement has to be, you know, usual rates.
Yeah.
Whatever your
Labor
usual
rate and
labor rate
parts.
is, because that is a huge problem that a lot of manufacturers, either they don't want to give you what they should be giving you, or if they do pay you for your normal labor rate, then they will surcharge you on the back end on all the units you purchase from them.
Sure.
So we're gonna work on that. It's gonna be a heavy lift because I'm sure the manufacturers group at the national level is not gonna like it. But there's been other states around us that have had success, like Minnesota, for example. They get a reimbursement of 30% over cost. So at least they're getting something, whereas in Wisconsin, we have no protections and the manufacturers wanna give you zero if they can.
Right. It's sort of like insurance companies. You know, they'll give you the money
Yeah.
up front and then they'll charge you for it later on, and they never really actually give you anything.
So we are working on.
Sort of like a
trying to
loan.
make that
They never actually pay out.
And really,
Yeah.
we only have two large
Right.
manufacturers in here. Do Skyline, who actually has a plant here, and then Crop, who actually has their headquarters in Milwaukee.
Croft does?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I just found one out the other day. I was like, oh.
Are you sure about
Yeah,
that?
they don't have a plant here at all, but their headquarters in Milwaukee.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and then, yeah, so we really don't have that much manufacturer competition in here. We're not
Right.
seeing it, but
Right.
have you ever thought about Skyline? I don't know if you've
Yes.
ever contacted
We've
them.
talked to Skyline multiple times. If we were looking for another park model line, and we've talked about it, you know, we'd be interested in possibly carrying Skyline. They have some, from what we've seen, some advantages and some disadvantages over the others. So yeah.
What you guys have seen in your.
Skyline's usually at Waco every year.
Yeah, I mean, they've got one. They've got one here now. Yep.
And
I already
we
saw
toured
Kevin.
Their plant.
We did. They seem like good people. So I would be interested in Skyline for sure. If we were looking to
Good job
expand.
in Manufactured housing and modular housing, so
Mhm.
it's the number one producer in Wisconsin.
And it's nice because you can save on shipping, because I mean, shipping is significant.
It is.
How
Other-
how many lines do you carry?
So of the two manufacturers, the Forest River Park Models and Crop Park Models, they each have, I think Forest River has 2 lines, and Crop has, I think now 3 that are allowed in the States. There's a Canadian line too that we can't do, which would be nice because they're 560 square feet instead of 400. But that's legislation we should work on. Get park models bigger. But yeah, so it's 3 lines on Crop and 2 lines on Forest River, so 5 altogether.
And then we also carry the Cherokee Destination Trip.
Yep, Cherokee Destination, which we could also sell Cherokee travel trailers if we wanted to, but again, because the margin's so low, we can't really compete with the big dealers on those. So I guess 6 lines total.
Well, how many units do you sell in a year?
New ones? Not many typically, because of course in our case, it's all based on how many sites we have available. So on a normal year, you know, say 5 years ago, we would probably average about 1 to 1.5 new units a year, maybe 2 new units a year, maybe depending on the economy. I mean, for us anyway, the trailer sales market follows the housing market very precisely.
And if somebody in your park wants to buy a new unit, how do they look at them?
So it depends. Sometimes we have one on site. Otherwise, they come meet with us. We have a lot of like photos and books and like wall boards and swatches and stuff. But a lot of times they'll just go to like the big RV dealers like Lakeland or something, and they'll go through park models and they'll take pictures of what they like, and they'll come back to us and then we'll order those options. To finish that other question though about how many we sell a year, of course, if we're doing an expansion or a bunch of people leave, then we'll sell a lot more. We sold like, I can't remember what it was, you know, maybe $700,000 worth of park models about 3 years ago because we bought a new campground and bulldozed it, waterfront, started over, you know, built the new sites. Well, then you have a great year on park model sales. So really, for us, it just depends on the sites.
And sometimes folks who are in the campground do upgrade. You know, it's not uncommon for people to come in with a travel trailer on a bare site and then stay and want to upgrade to a destination trailer or a park model over time.
So the manufacturers don't have an issue with you selling that low volume?
We haven't, no. I mean, and again, because we're not allowed to work for them, And that's part of why we try to make it as easy as we can for the manufacturers. And because we are such a limited scope, just in our park, it hasn't been an issue.
One thing I want to bring up that Adam hasn't mentioned yet, we do use park models for our cabin rentals, and as a dealer, we can get park models at
Wholesale. So that's nice too.
Yeah.
An extra advantage. All of ours are, in recent years, have been crops. We've looked at the Forest Rivers. One of these years, we might try one of those too. But other questions?
So
Yeah.
how long do you keep those in service
Our cabins.
as rentals?
The oldest one is I think a 2004.
Yes.
We haven't swapped any out yet.
Well, we did one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the very first one we did sell to a customer.
Yeah.
But that was more just because it was not really what we wanted as a rental unit. It wasn't very well put together. I mean, structurally it was okay, but it didn't have the right features that we were looking for. So, yeah, and we've talked about selling a couple times.
We're getting in the ballpark.
But with park models, you can sort of refurbish them and keep them going. So,
Yeah, and I mean, once the cabin's paid off, I mean, that's just money coming in, so.
Right.
But I mean, I would guess that when we do sell them, I mean, it depends on how old they are, but I wouldn't be surprised if we sold them for less than 10 grand.
yeah, maybe.
In that ballpark.
Depending on how old they
I
are.
guess, and people always ask, so I don't think we'll have any problem liquidating them when we're ready to.
And you'll sell them in your park to?
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
On site, or would you move it to a different?
We'd probably move it.
Yeah, we'd probably keep the cabin site more than likely, and move it. But I mean, it is cheaper if we can sell it on the same site. So we'd have to decide: do we want to designate new cabin sites? I guess we'd have to see about that at that
But then
time.
you're gonna get like a weird little, like suburban neighborhood of everybody looking exactly the same, because our cabins all match. And so if we start turning them into seasonals, I don't know.
I don't know. That's popular in the suburbs, from what I've seen.
I guess.
Everybody has the same houses, so
I don't know, we'll see.
right? I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but whatever you're into. Okay, other questions or topics of discussion? What time are we actually done here?
9:45, or 10:45, excuse me.
Okay,
5
so
minutes.
yeah, only got 5 minutes left anyway. That took pretty much the whole time. Anything else we want to discuss or anything off topic? We'd be happy to Cracker Barrel about campgrounds or anything.
You mentioned this at the beginning. Do you have to have a certain license?
You do, yep, we did talk about that. It's very inexpensive. It's something like $250 for 2 years for one person. We have 6 sales representatives, officially, and I think it's $340 or something every 2 years for the 6 people.
Must have get that online, or go find out how to get it online or something.
Through the
Yeah.
DOT.
Yeah, the
DOT.
DOT. I mean, honestly, if you Google Wisconsin RV dealer license,
Yeah.
it'll probably bring you to the governmental page.
The DOT has it really laid out very nice on their website.
Do they?
They've done a good job.
The only thing I don't like is they send me the renewal as a paper, and they don't include all of the forms that you have to fill out. So I have to remember to go online and find the rest of the forms and print them. I'm always like, come on, just send them all or send none of them.
And it's going to get worse. If it's anything like any other licensing in Wisconsin, pretty soon they're not gonna send you anything.
Yeah. Well, and then it's funny because you send it back and they're like, oh no, this isn't right. And you mail it back and forth multiple times because it's missing a page.
Yeah.
But I will say in general, we've had very little trouble or interaction with the DMV. You always worry about another regulatory authority, because we already, as campgrounds, we have so many authorities that are already got their hands in the pie. But that hasn't been an issue at all. And they have a separate, because if you ever tried to call the DMV, I mean, it's impossible, right? For regular people, you just can't do it. But they do have a separate line for dealers, a different phone number. And that one, you can actually get to a human being pretty quickly. So that part actually has been pretty good.
Must be that hotline that when you're at the DMV and they don't know, they call it.
Probably, yep.
That same day.
Yep.
You could be on hold till
Without being on
next
hold.
Thursday.
Yep, that's true.
How did you do, can I have that number?
Even if you had it, they wouldn't talk to you. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. All right, folks. Well, thanks for coming. We'll let you out a little early. Have a great day.